Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back in the video today. Ladies and gentlemen, the Houston Texans have finally found their franchise quarterback, and his name is CJ Stroud. Man, oh man, have I loved watching this kid play over the last 3 weeks. Week 1, week 2, it was fun. Right? They played pretty. Him and the team played pretty good in week 2 against the Colts. Defensively, terrible. Offense, I thought him and some of their wide receivers made some good progress in week 2. As if for week 1 against the Ravens, I think for a rookie quarterback, I think he made a solid debut. I think he threw for, it was like 260 passing yards, I believe, and no interceptions for a rookie. For a rookie performance as a rookie quarterback, I thought that was a very good week 1 performance, and scoring 10 points against a good Ravens defense in your first NFL game with no interceptions thrown. That is really solid for CJ Stroud. And I know he's not thrown it. I know he's fumbled twice. But at the same time, got to remember, I know he's fumbled twice. He's lost 2 fumbles, but he is missing 4 of his 5 starting offensive linemen. So I'm not going to really blame CJ Stroud for losing 2 fumbles in the first 3 games, especially with him being a rookie. But the Houston Texans finally got their first victory of the season when the Texans pounced the Jacksonville Jaguars 37-17. Stroud threw for 280 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns. Stroud in the first 3 games has thrown 4 passing touchdowns with 906 passing yards. Yeah, you heard that correct. 906 passing yards in the first 3 games as a rookie. And not only that, but Stroud has thrown 121 passes with 78 completions and still has not thrown an interception yet. Now, I hate to say that. I hate saying it because a fear of mine is every time I say that, I think, okay, now that I just said that, the next game he's going to throw an interception or 2. So I hate to talk about how he's not thrown an interception yet because it worries me that I'm going to jinx it, and then here comes an interception problem. But I don't believe that will happen. Although I will say I am in fear that maybe the interception streak comes to an end facing a really good Pittsburgh Steelers defense that has been, a monster with interceptions to start the year. They had 2 interceptions in week 2 against the Browns. They had 3 Sunday night against the Raiders. They didn't have any in week 1, but that's because they were facing Brock Purdy. They have 5 interceptions in the first 3 games. So, honestly, wouldn't surprise me if CJ Stroud throws his first interception but this upcoming week. But at the same time, wouldn't upset me because we are facing the Steelers in week 4. But I think the Texans, with the way Stroud has played, I think they have a good chance to beat the Steelers. But anyways, Stroud has looked good for, a rookie quarterback without 4 of his starting offensive linemen: Laramie Tunsil, Kenyon Green, Kenyon Green, Laramie Tunsil, Juice Scruggs, Titus Howard, that's right tackle, left tackle, center, and left guard. And the left guard, Kenyon Green, is out for the year, so he's never going to get him back this year. But at some point, all 3 of the other guys will be back. Laramie Tunsil should be this week against the Steelers. Week 5, Titus Howard will be back. Week 6, Juice Scruggs will be back. So shortly, week by week, Stroud will get his offensive line back. But I will say this right now, watching how Stroud has looked as a passer and as a leader of this team, I think the Texans finally got their franchise quarterback. I didn't know when Deshaun Watson had a standout rookie season for the Houston Texans in 2017. We said the same thing about Deshaun Watson. I know. I said it. I know I was a lot younger in 2017. In 2017, I think I was 2017, what was I? 11? Yeah, I believe. 2017, I was 11 years old, or 11 years old. And even though it was only my second year of watching football, I still thought that Deshaun Watson was our future quarterback, was our franchise quarterback. And honestly, if everything would have not happened with the way it happened, with DeAndre Hopkins being traded and J.J. Watt getting released and Bill O'Brien just ruining this franchise, I really do believe that Deshaun Watson probably would have stayed. If Hopkins didn't get traded, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Watson and Hopkins would still be playing for the Houston Texans today. But that doesn't matter because the Texans now have Will Anderson Jr. as J.J. Watt's replacement, and C.J. Stroud as Deshaun Watson's replacement. And I believe C.J. Stroud is a way better quarterback than Deshaun Watson ever was. Deshaun Watson, the 2020 quarterback that, led the NFL in passing yards and, had some great years with the Texans. I think C.J. Stroud will have, better years than the years, some of the prime years that Deshaun had here in Houston. And I'm not going to go ahead and say Will Anderson's going to be as good as J.J. Watt. I'm not saying I don't believe that, but J.J. Watt, I don't know. He's pretty damn good. I don't know. I don't want to go ahead and say that about Will Anderson just yet, but I think he's going to be pretty damn good for the Houston Texans. So this future is looking pretty bright. But I've been saying this over the last couple of weeks watching Stroud against the Colts and the Jaguars, but it looks like that Week 18 win against the Indianapolis Colts is probably the best thing that has happened against this franchise, not getting the number 1 overall pick, because the Texans won't have C.J. Stroud. I gotta admit, I've hated Lovie Smith and Davis Mills for a long time. Since that game, I've hated those two guys. For Davis Mills playing legendary finally to get the Texans that win that game, and then also Lovie Smith for them getting the win. But honestly, those guys deserve the keys to the city for what they did in that game, because not only did they get the Texans CJ Stroud, but they got the Texans Tank Dell wide receiver as well. I know that doesn't make sense, but I don't think the Texans would have drafted Tank Dell if it wasn't for CJ Stroud. Remember, in the third round, was it the third round or the fourth round? The third round, the Texans were planning on drafting a wide receiver, and CJ Stroud told the Texans he wanted them to draft Tank Dell. And they went ahead and did it. I'm not saying that the Texans would have not taken Tank Dell if CJ Stroud didn't tell them to. Maybe the Texans would have drafted him after. No. Who knows? But the Texans listened to Stroud and drafted Tank Dell. So Tank Dell is here because of Stroud, because Stroud asked them to draft him. So honestly, if the Texans would have won that game and Bryce Young Bryce Young was a Houston Texan, I mean, who knows, what wide receiver they would have drafted. Maybe he would have said a different wide receiver's name. But yeah, I honestly, and I know it's early for Bryce Young too, but even though Bryce Young has got off to a rocky start, I still think he's going to be a good quarterback, but I think C.J. Stroud will be a way better quarterback than Bryce Young. And I know it's early on, these two guys are. Bryce Young is only 2 games in. C.J. Stroud's only 3 games in because Bryce Young missed week 3. But C.J. Stroud is the Houston Texans franchise quarterback, and I can't wait to see what he does from on to going in the rest of the season. That's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out. Go Texans.